Well, hello everyone. How you doing this winter? How's the winter treating you? It's not treating me well at all. You know how it is with chronic pain, but we're getting kind of a trifecta: low temperature, high humidity, low barometric pressure. So, yeah, it's been really difficult for me to get up enough to get on camera to come and talk to you. Fortunately, I've been able to get other jobs done for clients while that's being done, because that doesn't really require getting on camera and talking to people. But this is kind of as fresh as I have been. So sorry I haven't been able to do more. This is one I've been wanting to talk about for a few days, though, because we're not the only ones having trouble with winter. It's pretty bad over in Germany, too. And this was about 5 days ago on the 12th, I think. Visigrad24 did a tweet X whatever about Sweden's Deputy Prime Minister Ebba Busch. And she is also the energy minister. And she is not happy with Germany. She said she is furious. Why? Because they shut off all their nuclear power. They were generating something like 22 gigawatts of electricity with nuclear power. Now, none. And we've been talking about that and what a dumb job that was. Now, we were kind of hoping that them being in a bad winter a couple of years ago meant that they'd see the light on it, and they didn't, and so now it's none. So what's happening now? Well, Germany is having a bad winter, which means they need a lot of electricity. They've been relying on renewables, and of course, as we've talked about, they've been using coal and natural gas as a backup when they're not working. Without Nord Stream, that basically means they're buying it, from Norway or whoever. But their main reliance is on solar and wind. And the problem is, with the weather they've been having, when you have a consistent barometric pressure over an area like they have, you don't have any wind. And the wind turbines don't blow. And so they've had like a couple of stretches of like a couple of weeks at a time with no wind and no output from the wind turbines. It's also been pretty much perpetually overcast. Germany doesn't get a heck of a lot of sunlight normally. Now it's basically been large stretches like weeks at a time when it's been none. And they might get a break here and there. I think they're starting to get another little break now, but it's looking like that might be the norm for this winter over there. Just no wind and cloud cover. Nothing from the turbines, very little from the solar. When we say the sun doesn't always shine and the wind doesn't always blow, this is the problem. This is what we're talking about. And so Visigrad24, I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing that right, but he posted about Ebba Busch being furious with Germany for dismantling its nuclear power plants, causing a spike in energy prices in Sweden. Now, if you're wondering, wait a minute, what's Germany got to do with Sweden? Well, the EU has this deal between all their countries that if one of them's low on power, they buy it from the neighboring country. So that means that Sweden needs to sell some power to Germany, and some of their other neighbors do as well. And what that means is, with Germany demanding all this electricity from Sweden, what happens when demand goes up? Price goes up. That's what's been happening. Southern Sweden has had record high energy prices due to having to send electricity to Germany via undersea power cables. Cold weather coupled with no wind has driven up demand in Germany. EU regulations force Sweden to send that electricity to Germany, driving up prices in southern Sweden nearly 200 times higher than they are in northern Sweden, because in Sweden, there's a couple of different reasons that has to do with the terrain, it has to do with latitude, it has to do with all sorts of things. It's just really difficult for them to transmit power between northern Sweden and southern Sweden. And so like the prices in northern Sweden were still really, really cheap because they weren't able to sell any to Germany because they can't transmit it there, but southern Sweden got the brunt of it. To the point where a 10-minute shower in southern Sweden cost $5. Now that was on that spike. I think it went down, but then I think it went up again and went down. It was something like the equivalent converted from euros to dollars. It was the equivalent of something like 90 cents per kilowatt hour. And in the US, it's normally like 10. And so she said, I'm furious with the Germans. They have made a decision for their country, which they have the right to make. It's their right to decide, but it has had very serious consequences also for the EU's competitiveness, because we see that German competitiveness has dropped significantly. And that's also a problem because ordinarily German industry represents a big exporter out of Europe. And if they can't keep the power going and they can't keep the exports going, that's a problem. And this closes off with, having access to such baseload power plants would have increased the transmission capacity from Germany to other electricity price areas in Europe, driving down prices for all of us. So I've got a couple of other articles, and they're in Swedish, so they'll have to go through Google Translate. So that's going to get a little weird. But before then, I thought we'd hear about a couple of things that she had to say. These are in Swedish as well. I used an AI to translate them, so let's hear what she has to say.
Sweden's big problem is that we have weather-dependent electricity production. That means if we have a mild winter this year and the beginning of next year, with wind blowing fairly evenly across the country, not like we've seen in some cases where it blows in northern Sweden, but not in southern Sweden. Then we can suddenly have many days with negative prices. That's what we don't know in advance. Now we have extreme examples from yesterday and today. It's incredibly tough for households who don't know what to expect for Christmas. What will the electricity bill be at the end of December? It is impossible to say, because it is very difficult to say about the weather. But we are ready to support households with additional measures if needed. But that's not where we are right now.
Yeah, okay, that seems to be a funny thing. I think it takes a little longer to say things in Swedish than it does in English. So let's also listen to the first part of this other one. See what she has to say to a reporter.
Ebba Busch, this government promised lower electricity prices, and now many people are worried because it's getting expensive. What do you say to them?
That it takes time to clean up after Magdalena Andersson and Märta Stenevi. We've warned about this situation so many times. If you make Sweden dependent on sun and wind, then you will be dependent on sun and wind. Swedes face high electricity prices when it's not windy or sunny. This is the system they left, and I must fix it. During certain times of the day, because it is not windy, because the sun is not shining. It was exactly this system you wanted. It was exactly this electrical system you left behind. And it is my job to clean this up now. So in the short term, we're implementing several measures to ensure that we can have more electricity available in Sweden where it's needed. Some of this will be noticeable already this winter. And at the beginning of next year, we will also be able to have the Öresund plant available again.
Yeah, so that's actually the problem. Like I said, this is what you wanted. You wanted solar and wind, and we told you. They kept saying, we're tired of hearing sun doesn't shine all the time and wind doesn't blow all the time. Well, you might be tired of hearing it, but we got people who are also very tired of living it. All right, I think we can leave off the rest of that. So then let's go into Expressen, where we have a little more on this. And the first part is essentially what you just heard her say. It's our job to clean this up. There's no quick fix, but they got to get more power generating. All right, insane about the Germans. She directs a boot at Germany. She gives them a boot to the head, I guess. This is losing stuff in translation, I'm sure. Let me say this. I'm crazy about the Germans again. Translation bad. Yeah, I'm crazy about them, baby. No, she means they're driving her crazy. Germany neglected to introduce electric areas and the prices paid by Swedish consumers. But of course, the fingers also point at the opposition, at the other party, the Social Democrats and the Green Party that shut down nuclear power, like in Germany, which makes you dependent on dirty coal or gas from Russia. And that's from Jessica Rosencrantz, EU minister. And Magdalena Andersson and the opposition have the guts now to complain about the system that was imposed on the Swedish people. There are some who have completely disqualified themselves from ever speaking about the energy system again. It is the leading representatives of the opposition. It's Magdalena Andersson, because it was this electricity system they created, and the Swedish households have to pay the cost. We clean, whatever that means. On Thursday, they reached the highest levels since the energy crisis in 2022. That was back when we were saying, well, we hope they learn their lesson. And they keep those last couple of nuke plants going and they start getting some of their stuff back up. They didn't. So one of the biggest reasons why Swedish electricity prices are so high right now, especially in southern Sweden, is that wind and solar power in Germany are running at low speed due to the weather. Yeah, so a little bit lost in translation, but you know what they're saying. Germany is using a lot more power than they're producing, and that's putting the burden on Sweden. Well, we have the next day, Germany strikes back against Ebba Busch. This is your own responsibility. Let's see, during Thursday, a kilowatt hour just cost over 8 Swedish krona, which is on par with the energy crisis, so apparently that's a really high price. What is 8 krona? See if I can figure that out. 8 krona is 73 cents. 73 cents per kilowatt hour. That's 7 times what we pay. One of the biggest reasons for the sky-high prices is that wind and solar in Germany are running at low speeds due to the weather. There's that speed thing again, just weirdness with the translation. If someone in the comments reads Swedish, maybe you can give us a little better translation there. But it caused Energy Minister Ebba Busch to roar against the country. And there's the whole I'm mad at the Germans again. However, she does not get any attention from the Germans. Stefan Hauck, spokesperson for German Energy Minister Robert Habeck of the Greens, tells the radio that the high electricity prices are Sweden's own responsibility. Swedish electricity prices depend primarily on Swedish conditions, not German ones. And he says Sweden has too little electricity production in the southern half of the country and that the transmission capacity is too poor. Well, apparently they got more than you because they're helping you out. They're sending their power to you. Germany also has no plans to meet Busch's demands. There is no regret over the decision to shut down the last 3 nuclear power plants, according to Hauck, who also believes that electricity in industrially dense southern Germany would be too expensive if Germany were divided into electricity price zones. Yeah, because they'd have to actually generate it themselves instead of being able to make others pick up the slack. And then a spokesperson for Chancellor Olaf Scholz said, it's just before Christmas, then you have an understanding of everything. Not sure what that means, but I think it's the fact that it's just before Christmas and prices are rising. At the same time, people are wanting to buy Christmas presents and everything and doing other end-of-year things and all the end-of-year bills and everything else in there, wondering how it's going to go. So yeah, the Germans are trying to deny that it was a bad idea to shut down the nuclear power plants. Even though it absolutely was. And if you look at the prices throughout the EU, what you find is that, Germany, Denmark, places like that have really, like Denmark really got hot and heavy over wind. And ordinarily, wind is like almost half of their electricity generation. What happens in a time like this when it stops blowing? It goes down, and it's also part of that, they've had to, southern Sweden has had to pick up the slack for Denmark as well. So that doesn't help. When instead, if you look at France, which has all this nuclear capacity, France is very good at being able to meet their own power demands and help out their neighbors a little more. So people don't get it. People don't get it. Well, I was looking for an update to this. I was trying to figure out what's actually been happening with electricity prices in Germany. What's the ramifications of this? Has this just been bluster or is anything actually happening? I didn't find anything directly, but I did find this. German Chancellor Olaf Scholz has lost a vote of confidence in his government, putting Germany on the path to snap elections on February 23rd. 394 MPs voted against him, 207 voted for him, 116 abstained. So even if every single one of the abstentions had voted for him, he still would have lost. Now, I don't know if this has anything to do with the power crisis and shutting down the nuclear plants and all, but it does mean there's going to be some changes in Germany. And so I guess we'll see on February who the German people chooses their successor and what their opinion on nuclear power is going to be. And I was looking down through the responses to this, and I didn't see anything about the power crisis or about nuclear power, but either way, this is a change. Hopefully it'll be a good one. Most of Germany's power plants can be restarted. I'm not sure about that one where they were actually dumb enough to destroy the cooling towers, because those things are expensive, man. Those big hourglass-shaped cooling towers. I'm not sure which one that was, and if maybe they have a sufficient waterway near them, they can just use that to do water cooling instead of having to use the cooling tower. And there are other ways to cool it, but most of them are fine and could be brought back online, not easily, not cheaply, but a lot more cheaply than building a new plant of any kind. And that's really what they need to start doing. And that's what we need to start doing. That's what everyone needs to start doing. So I'm kind of hopeful that Trump's new energy guy, what was his name? Chris Wright, I think. I hadn't heard of him before. But he is an executive on the board of a nuclear startup. And their vision is to do MMRs and just have smaller MMRs powering neighborhoods and city centers and business parks and everything else. You know, small reactors between 5 and 15 megawatts. But anyway, a company that is just really behind nuclear power and has actually been working with the NRC to try and get it going, only to have the rug pulled out from them several times, just like that's what the NRC is like. They have not approved a single new type of power plant in their entire existence. Now, they were about to approve, which SMR was it? I forget which one it was. One of the SMRs they were about to approve, they yanked that out. They were really close to approving this company's MMR, yanked it out. So hopefully this guy understands the problem and can help Trump clean house at the NRC and get things going better in that direction. We can only hope nuclear can be our savior. When you're talking about how much is done over the world for the sake of power, you know, how Russia basically tried to provide natural gas to all of Europe and therefore get a lot of control in their countries, and how the destruction of the Nord Stream pipelines, you know, was basically an act of war, which is why they don't want to admit that they did it. But that's what that was. That's what the Middle East wars are all about. It's all about power. It's all about energy. Nuclear can make everyone self-sufficient and everyone in a good position to help out their neighbors if a crisis does happen. And let's hope that more people wake up to that. Looks like more people are. Hopefully, more politicians and regulators will too. Thank you so very much for watching. Comments for the Comic God, shares for the Share Throne. Please hit like, subscribe, and the bell. And of course, donate.bogosity.tv to keep me doing what I do through thick and thin, through good days and bad, pushing through the pain to give these videos to you. Hopefully, I was still kind of more of my bright, sunny self, even though I'm not feeling 100%. It's all for you. I love doing these videos. I love doing this. I love putting this information out there. As small an audience as I can. If you people tell other people, and they tell other people, and they tell other people, even though I don't get any glory from having a viral video that did anything like that, I don't care about that. I just want the change to happen. And you can be a part of that by sharing this video, by supporting Patreon, Subscribestar, becoming a regular supporter, get these videos early and ad-free. Thank you so very much for watching. Until next time, stay strong and be free.